You're on.
One of the most extraordinary things that God has ever had me do was done just a week ago. And when people realized that this was God and that God has completed it, He finished it, He started it, I was merely the tool that God used to bring it before the people. Now, God requires faith even in His tool. All I did was speak the words that God put into my heart about the things that He had told me that He was getting ready to do. Now, I can't change it. If I go back there, the church tomorrow, and I say, look, fellows, I was wrong. I don't think God's going to do any of that. Ignore what I've said. It would still happen. It would still happen because, see, it's not my word. It's not my ideal. It's not not of my being. Okay? It's not of my being. It didn't come from me. It did not originate from me. It was not my original thought. Now, I prayed for the lady. I did. You know, her family is a godly family. But simply put, God is going to heal this woman from something she has a great fear of. The Lord said it will pass her by. But you know what? Now, there is another guy that lives right down the street whom I have prayed for. My family's prayed for. The church has prayed for. And the Lord has been silent to me about him. Has not said a word. And you know what? My heart goes out to him as much as it did for this lady that God says I'm going to heal. So what is the difference between the two? Well, you know, here is part of the answer. Romans 8:7. It says, because the carnal mind is enmity against God, or the carnal mind is the enemy of the things that God will produce in our life from a godly standpoint of view. Okay? That's my paraphrase of what this is saying. For it is not subject to the law, for neither indeed can be. Now, one of the things that Christ told us was, He said, if you keep my commandments, you are my friends. Isn't that something to say? You know, all friends have conditions. If you break those conditions, you're no friend. One of the greatest statements I've ever heard about that came from a 10-year-old boy, where this little kid, he did something and blamed it on his friend and let everybody think that it was him because he had his coat. He was down in a hole and he had on his friend's coat. Well, when he came out of the hole, and nobody saw his face when he was running away, so they thought it was the friend's because it was his coat. And so he just let everybody think that it was his friend that did it. And they came down on him hard. Brought him into the school the next day, and boy, principal tore into him, and it was a whole long drawn out thing with everybody, and so this little boy, this little 10-year-old boy, obviously backed up by writers, but this is the statement that he made. He said, you know what? He said, you are just not a good friend. And I've used that statement several times to other people. You are not a good friend. When they lie to you, steal, or cheat from you, use you, and try to get you fired, you need to look that person right in the face and say, you're just not a good friend. And when those people out there who are expecting from God, which are treating Him in a similar fashion because of the things that God requires of us, Jesus looks at them and says, you're just not a good friend. You know what? I have been shunned from people before who I would go to minister. I've been shunned from those people. I felt in my heart I'm just not wanted there. How is God to minister to people? You know what? Jesus is looking at those kind of people saying, you are just not a good friend. And let me tell you something. If you lose Jesus as a friend, buddy, you've lost a lot. You have lost a lot. You have lost the opportunity for that dread, for that fear in your life to pass you by, handled by the hand of God. That's what you lost. And that's the reason for it. You know, when two people get married, there's a lot of things said up there in front of that preacher. But there is a lot more things that is expected of that spouse that nothing is ever said about. When you're up there in front of the preacher, the wife says nothing about, I expect you to bring home a paycheck every week. But it's expected. It's expected. Never says anything about, I expect you not to flirt with other women. But it's expected.
Or you're dead.
Don't say anything about it, you know. Don't say anything about, I expect you to comfort me when I'm down. I expect you to have joy with me when I am happy. Those things are not normally said, and not just that, but there is 1,000 other things.
Or spend time with your wife.
That are expected, you know, that are not said up there. Listen, love covers a multitude of sin. A multitude of sin. You know, and as a Christian, we're wondering, why is it taking us so long to get into this place? Why is it taking so long to get into this place that we need to be in order for God to say to those things, pass us by, you know? To look down on us and say, have our misery. The Bible says, listen, the promises of God says the healing is the children's bread. The children's bread. The obedient children. Listen, sometimes a disobedient child has to go without bread. Do you ever notice it? Well, to parents that care, parents that don't care. Listen, God is a faithful Father and He cares. And if you're a disobedient child, brother, you're going to go without bread. I guarantee it. I guarantee you will go without bread. Because He loves you. The Bible says He shall meet all of your needs according to your riches and according to His riches and glory. And if your need is for you to go without bread more than it is to have it, then you're going to go without bread. Why? Because that's what it takes to get your heart in the right place so that you can understand what it means to keep His commandment. You are my friend if you keep my commandment. You know, the Osteens of the world would think that God is this happy little dude like a court jester comes in and all he does is he throws money this way and he throws feathers that way and he makes joke lighthearted of everything to come along, and he never brings any misery, never has any kind of negative message for the world to see. But Jesus says, I come not to bring peace but a sword. I come not to bring peace but a sword. Let's read a little bit more. Let's go over to the King James. This is Romans 8:7. The flesh is the enemy of God. Listen, your enemy will separate you from your family. It'll separate you from your spiritual part of who you are in God. It says, Romans 8:12. It says, therefore, brethren, this is to Christian. When it says brethren, that means this is to Christian people. We are debtors, not to the flesh, to live in the flesh. For if you live after the flesh, you shall die. What does that mean? It means you're going to go to hell, is what it means. If you live after the flesh, brethren, Christians, if you live after the flesh, you'll die. The Bible was not talking about your body's going to die. This is Apostle Paul, by the way, writing this, Romans 8. Apostle Paul telling Christians they're going to go to hell if they live after the flesh. But if ye through the Spirit do mortify the deeds of the body, ye shall live. Mortify, you know what mortify means? Put to death. Put to death. For as many as are led by the Spirit of God, they are the sons of God. They are the sons of God. For if you have not received the Spirit of, for we have not received the spirit of bondage again to fear, but ye have received the Spirit of adoption, whereby we cry, Abba, Father. Some people so conveniently read that off, pretending like it's not really there, about ye shall die. But listen, this is what holds you back. This is what holds back your healing. This is what holds back your blessing. This is what holds back your step up in the ministry. This is what's causing your church to have 25 people when it should have 3,000. This is it. How do we correct it? We get before God. We put away a time for God and God alone. Listen, if you fast and you don't pray, all you're doing is getting skinny. Listen to me, preachers. If you fast and you don't pray, all you're doing is getting skinny. If you don't do this in a right fashion before God, you're failing at the foundation of what you're trying to do. The ideal is not just to discipline the flesh, but the ideal is to destroy the flesh while bringing yourself closer to God. See, destroying the flesh includes bringing in a spiritual awakening that will overcome. You can't destroy something unless you overcome it. Go study Romans 8:12 down through about verse 18. Yeah. I'm telling you what, man, you will be amazed. No, I didn't say just read it. I said study it. Reference out every phrase, every word that it says there. You will be a changed person. You'll be a changed person. You'll get into the place. You will get into the place where God will send somebody to you and say, your misery shall pass you by. Isn't that great? That is so great. And God bless you. Thank you for joining me. We'll see you next time. Another great message, Crossing the Middle Ministry.